Bernie Sanders making some major moves in the polls, stealing momentum from fellow progressive candidate Elizabeth Warren. He's now on top of New Hampshire, with the new poll having him at 16%, Warren at 14%. And nationally, he's just behind Biden. He's back in second place. In fact, both Biden and Bernie have been rising in polls since October, where Warren has fallen behind. So what's behind the rise in popularity of the septuagenarians? Let's ask New Voice chairman Herman Cain. Herman, you know, the Democratic Party, we started out at the beginning of the year, they're young, they're woke, they're dynamic. You know, we're going to have people of color and all these things. You know, oh, never mind. It's the same 70-year-olds. Not that this 70-year-olds, because I know you're such a great-looking septuagenarian, like, you know, I forget sometimes that.
I think that some people underestimate septuagenarians, and I think they may underestimate them. But don't underestimate their leadership ability. And in this case, neither Biden nor Bernie have articulated anything that suggests that they would be strong leaders. That's why they're going to fall down. It's not the age, it's whether or not they have the ability. And I don't think either one of them have the ability to get all the way to gain the Democrat nomination. No, I don't think either one of them do, because they talk a lot, but they don't say a lot that inspires people to believe that they can lead.
Well, it feels like Bernie has created maybe a cult-like following. You know, in early October, you had the scare, the heart scare. He was at 14, less than 15%. Now he's almost at 20%. People had written him off then. I know a lot of this came at the expense of Elizabeth Warren. But are you surprised, though, that the biggest rival to this group is Buttigieg, who's only 37 years old and still in single digits?
No, I'm not surprised, and here's why. I think the fact that Bernie is rising is because of name ID, and Elizabeth Warren is falling in the polls because there is a socialism backlash. I think that's what's happening. Buttigieg is not really a factor yet, not until he gets into second or third place. So I happen to think that this is a socialism backlash because the American people have demonstrated and said over and over and over, I have been getting this anecdotally, that they are not stupid. And all of these socialist ideas that all of these people are putting out there aren't resonating with the people. And all you have to do is look at some of the latest polls which verify that, because many of the people that consider themselves moderates or in the middle, 10 percentage point swing against impeachment.
Right.
And I also believe that they're also not buying the socialist ideas. That's what the current crop of candidates are doing. And that's basically, they're selling socialism.
So it sounds like to me that in your mind, maybe Mike Bloomberg made a smart move to sort of take his platinum parachute and jump into this thing.
I think it was a smart move, but I only give him about a 40% chance of being able to get the nomination. And here's why. I believe that Michael Bloomberg has only about a 40% chance of getting the nomination because he will attract most of the quote-unquote normal Democrats, if there is such a thing, versus all of these people who are rabid with some of these so-called progressives that are all the way over to the left, because he will pick up most of the support that Biden would have gotten, but Biden is beginning to falter. So Bloomberg may pick up a lot of that support, but the biggest challenge for Bloomberg is going to be, how does he moderate these extreme views of the rest of the candidates with his common sense plan?
No, Herman, every time I talk with you, I learn things. And two things I've got to just repeat. Septuagenarians, don't underestimate them when they have leadership ability, and Americans are not stupid. Okay.
Yes.
Herman, thank you very much.
Take it.
Always a pleasure.
Take it to the bank, Charles.
I will.
Take it to the bank.
Like
That's how you make money.
Like everything else you tell me, my friend. Thank you.